Hello and welcome to the Animation Industry Podcast. My name is Terry and you can support this podcast on Patreon. This week I'm chatting with Blake Derksen, an LA-based stop-motion animator who's worked on titles like Alien Xmas, Crossing Swords, and Robot Chicken. In this chat he's going to share the process behind his currently in production independent stop-motion short film called The Other Space, which was inspired by his own journey through cancer treatment as a child, with the goal of helping other young cancer patients face their situations with courage. Now, before we get into this chat, this episode is sponsored by Hue, makers of colorful plug-and-play cameras for learning, work, and play. Originally designed for teachers, Hue cameras can also be used for creative activities such as capturing hand-drawn pencil tests and shooting behind-the-scenes footage, time-lapse videos, and of course, stop-motion animation. Their cameras have flexible, posable necks, manual focus controls, and they are compatible with Dragonframe, OBS, Twitch, Zoom, and many other camera apps. Visit huehd.com to learn more and follow @HueCameras on social media for news, fun, and giveaways, and get 10% off any Hue product from huehd.com with code 10TerryAIP, and all of those details are in the description of this chat. And now, without further ado, let's jump in. Hello, Blake. How's it going today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm not enjoying the super humid weather here in Toronto, but I heard you're just at the beach enjoying the super hot weather in California. So
Well, now I'm back at home where it's almost triple digits and
crazy.
humid inside. So
Yeah. Well, you were just telling me about your frog, your pet Pac-Man frog who loves humidity. So she's
yeah,
probably loving
yeah.
that.
No, she is happy about that. She's not so jazzed about the heat sometimes, but we try to keep it cool for her.
Oh,
So
really? Okay. Because
yeah,
they aren't so jazzed. Aren't they from like a hot climate?
they are. But like 75 to 85 degrees is kind of like the ideal temperature for them. And
Yeah.
so, if it gets much hotter than that in here for us, then, I'm kind of suffering too. But with her humidity, she feels it sooner. So,
So what does a
gotta,
Pac-Man frog do to express that they're heat distressed? Just like melt?
um, that would be kind of hilarious because she already looks kind of like a burger if she just
Yeah.
melted into a puddle. That would be funny. But no, she gets more active actually, which is
Oh.
funny because Pac-Man frogs are ambush predators. So her whole deal is kind of burrowing into one spot and
Hmm.
sitting there and just waiting for prey to walk by. Very sedentary. It's once she starts moving that I get worried.
Oh my gosh. Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
The life of a Pac-Man frog. I learn something new every day.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's talk about animation because that's what this podcast is about, and in stop motion specifically. So, give me a little bit of a rundown on like if when you have to like submit a bio to like something, or like give me a bio, like in one or two sentences, like what would you say about yourself?
Um, I fell in love with stop motion in middle school. Um, and since then my love for animations evolved, and I'm just enjoying working in the animation industry as a stop motion animator. Sometimes it's kind of slow, but you know, I keep at it because I love it. So
Yeah, nice.
yeah.
What are you working on? I want to talk about your film, The Other Space, but besides that, what are you working on right now?
Right now, the other space is kind of my full-time commitment because
Makes
I feel
sense.
like well, the industry is kind of slow right now, but I also just figure if I don't dedicate myself to this now, I don't think it's ever really gonna happen. So just trying to make that happen and um yeah, finish the film.
For sure. I think about that myself too, because it's like easier. Like I have film ideas that I want to produce, but like when you're working full time, and especially in the animation industry, when you're working like contract to contract, you're like, I don't know when I'm
Yeah,
gonna get my next contract, so I better take this. And then you take it, and then like
yeah,
a year goes by, and I still haven't produced that thing I wanted to make. And I'm like, I'll do it when I have downtime. But then I don't know. It's just like this never-ending game of like,
Yeah.
I want to make a film. Oh no, I'm working, and then it never happens. So I think it's good
Yeah.
that you have doubled down and you're like, I'm gonna produce this film right now. So maybe okay, so I want to talk about this film because I think it's an important film and I think it's really cool. And I think, I've been following you for a while and I'm really impressed by the animation you've created, especially in school. Like I was not at that level I was not at the level you are when I was where you were, if that makes
Yeah.
sense as a sentence.
Yeah.
But okay,
Well,
let's
thank
talk
you.
about how you discovered stop motion in middle school.
Yeah. So it's kind of a funny like story. My dad got an iMac like in like 2007 and randomly used his point and shoot camera to like make a little video of my cousin's birthday party.
Okay.
I saw that he made a movie and I got super excited. I asked like, Dad, can you show me how you did that? And so my best friend and I, we started making little live action movies. I showed them to my uncle and he said, have you ever thought about trying stop motion? And I kind of intuited what he meant by that, but I didn't even know what those words meant really. But the next thing I know, like I was like animating with some Lego Bionicles, just one picture at a time, like 3 frames a second. And I showed it to my best friend, and he and I just both got bitten by the animation bug. And every Saturday we would get together and just make movies together about characters knocking each other's heads off and
Oh my
you know
goodness. It sounds
general
like the
junior
good old
high.
days of stop motion YouTube. I've never heard of
Yeah.
somebody saying, "Oh, you made a live action video. You know what you should try? Stop motion." Like, where does your was your uncle like an animator? Like he just he just ran
No,
suggested that.
I think he's just always I've always loved drawing and doing origami and things, and origami is another thing that he got me into actually. And I think he grew up watching like Gumby and Pokey and
Right.
Davy and Goliath, and I think he just thought, oh, you should try making something like that because he loved it. So
Yeah, I
uh,
it's maybe okay, that's interesting to me because like the generation before us had like these major cultural influences like Davy and Goliath and Gumby that everybody knew about. Like if you ask
yeah,
somebody of a certain age, everybody knows about that and everybody knows it's like clay. But then like growing up, I didn't see, except for like Pengu, I guess, I didn't really see
yeah.
that much stop motion. Like it was kind of lost to like the next generation for a while. So
Yeah. I mean, I had seen Wallace and Gromit, but this
yeah.
is kind of embarrassing, but it was like after I had been animating with clay for like I think over a year that it hit me that was the same thing.
I mean
Like
that
I had to see it again. It was like, oh, wait, yeah,
wait a
that's
minute.
stop motion. Yeah.
I guess you're right. We had Wallace and Gromit and like Chicken Run and like those were
Yeah.
big influences. And like Chicken Run specifically, I remember like in middle school we had like a plasticine class and I was like doing
Hmm.
my best to recreate the characters from memory. So okay, maybe I take that back. But yeah, it's funny how like people don't know that stop motion is stop motion until you like really until they have like a eureka, I guess. So
Yeah.
you're in middle school, you're on an iMac. Is that one of those Macs that are like colored, like it's like a box?
Not that old. It was, I think, one of the first aluminum body
Oh,
ones.
okay,
They
yeah,
had
yeah,
just
those are
moved
neat.
away from the white plastic
Right,
iMac.
right.
Um, yeah, so and that also meant that it was not the older, better version of iMovie, but I didn't know any better. So I was just happy to have free editing software.
Yeah, I remember using iMovie when I was in high school, and you couldn't make a single frame. You had to like
Yeah,
you had to like time it. So I just put it like 0.01 second or whatever, and then whatever frame
yeah,
that ended up being, that was the animation I used. Okay, so you're making stop motion videos with your best friend every weekend. That sounds like a dream and super fun.
yeah.
When did you realize that this is something like, because you're already doing origami and you're doing videos, like you sound like a creative person. When did you realize that, hey, I want to make this a bigger part of my life and like pursue this very seriously rather than like, this is a fun hobby? Because a lot of people, you know, like, I don't know, you're playing
Yeah.
soccer on the weekends with your friends every week, but you're not like, I'm going to become a soccer player, you know?
Yeah, no, it's so true because both my friend Alex and we both said, yeah, this is a fun hobby, but we could never make a career out of this. And now here we are, like over what, 15, 20 years later, and we're both in the animation
Oh, you
industry.
both are? Oh, that's
And
incredible.
yeah,
That's
he's
really
a
nice to
concept.
hear.
Yeah, no, he's a concept artist now. And he's actually helping on the other space. So but it wasn't until like about halfway through high school that my dad actually kind of pulled me aside, and I was thinking of pursuing like kind of robotics
Hmm.
um and engineering, and he said, I don't think you're going to be very happy doing that. um I think you should maybe think about pursuing animation. And which is just so weird because then like I feel like it's the opposite of a lot of people's experiences where
Yeah,
they have
I was just
their
thinking
parents
that.
are kind of trying to scare them off from it. And my dad tried to kind of encourage me, like, hey, you should maybe actually consider this. I think they did have some encouragement from my multimedia teacher in high school. Um, he's the one who told us about CalArts, and he told them, I think your son has a shot
Hmm.
at this. So I
Wow.
think they got kind of some encouragement from him, and then they encouraged me, maybe you should actually like
That's incredible. So
consider
in
this.
so you already stood out enough like in high school for your multimedia teacher to be like, I think this kid has a shot in this incredibly difficult to get into animation school.
Yeah, I am kind of surprised that he he saw that in me, I guess, because like looking back at it, I'm kind of like, oh dang, I that that was some stiff competition. I'm surprised he thought I had a chance.
Yeah, that's
But
incredible.
yeah,
I also think it's funny that you were like, I want to choose a mathematical engineering driven profession, and your parents were like, hold up. We don't think you're going to be
yeah,
happy. I think that's amazing. That sounds super supportive. And,
yeah,
you know, a lot of people all around the world I talk to, especially in stop motion, because it's such like a niche thing to pursue. And if you pursue it, you really have to put your heart into it. Where I've
yeah,
talked to people who were engineers and then
yeah,
they were like, I'm not happy with this. And then they got into stop
yeah.
motion or something else related. Like I think that's super interesting. How did you know, looking back now, do you feel, because like when I talk to these people, they're like, I had to really like dig deep into my heart and realize this is what I had to do or I would not be happy. And it was so difficult to like go against the
Yeah,
stream, and my friends and my family and nobody around me understood. I'm like, this sounds like the exact opposite, which I think
yeah.
I would, you know, is incredible. How does it feel looking back, like to know that you were kind of nurtured to do this thing and now you're doing it?
Um, it's kind of encouraging, I guess, because yeah, I think uh a lot of my drive in life just comes from enjoying making things and building things.
Yeah.
And that was always the part of like engineering that uh I liked, was like I would build with Legos, like make the Lego Mindstorms robots and stuff. Um, but I think it was always kind of the building aspect that I loved. And um, so and almost kind of the animatronic side of it. So in some ways it always was animation. It just took me a while to realize that that's what I loved, is bringing things to life. So
Yeah, it makes sense. Because like if I think about robotics and whatnot, like that's math, I guess, and coding and
yeah, which
experimenting
that's
together.
this yeah, the coding side is always the side I hated. So which always irked my dad, because he said, if you're gonna, and even in animation, he still thinks that I should learn some coding, that it would help me. But he is a math teacher, so
Well, that makes sense.
yeah,
I mean, I don't think it can hurt. You might discover
yeah,
a new way of movement or that you wouldn't think of before. I don't know. So how does it feel now
yeah.
that animation is basically your life and you're working full time on this film that you've had in your mind?
Uh, it's fun. Yeah, I mean, working independently right now, while we're still in the middle of funding, is kind of nerve-wracking.
Right.
But yeah, working in stop motion has been um super fun to get to push puppets around for a living. That's fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it is. It is. I mean,
Yeah.
for me it's fun. It's also extremely frustrating.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's exciting, it's anger, it's patience, it's crying, it's
Yeah.
it's every emotion basically. It's like I don't know, when I'm animating, I feel like it's the best way I know how to like express who I am somehow because I'm like
Mm,
telling a story with the characters and the movement that I think is best conveyed it. And it like
yeah.
there's nothing like it for me that I've discovered elsewise. It's
Yeah.
got like the design that I like. It's got like,
Mm.
the imagination of a different world. It's got the animating. It's got bringing something to life, telling a story, showing people. So yeah. Why don't you give me a little bit of like a headline of the other space? Like what is this film that you're creating and you're in the middle of about?
Yeah, so the other space is about a young boy named Otis going through his initial cancer diagnosis and using his imagination to stay positive in the midst of that.
Wow.
Um,
That's a that's I think I mean I know a little bit more about your project. Um, if you're listening, we're going to get into it, but
yeah,
I think it's very interesting because I watch a lot of stop motion. I've been like basically every single day that I've existed since I was like 12. I scour
wow.
the internet and watch stop motion. It doesn't matter who's made it, if it's a movie, it's on YouTube, it's on Instagram, it's on like I'm just watching stop motion all the time. And most stop motion is about like taking like a world that's not based in reality. Like yeah, there is for
Yeah,
sure, but it's like you're telling a fairy tale, you're telling a horror story, you're telling a fantasy story, and yours does kind of both. But and maybe you can talk a little bit more about why you chose like a cancer, a kid with a cancer diagnosis as the story. But like why is your story grounded in like a very realistic like human experience topic, I guess.
yeah. Well, it comes from a really personal place for me. In 2012, I was diagnosed with bone cancer, and I think creativity was a really huge outlet for me in the middle of all of that. Um, I was constantly doing origami while I was in the hospital. And then whenever I got home, the first thing I'd want to do usually was animate because I couldn't have my computer with me at the hospital. So I was always excited to get home and animate. Um, and uh, I like the initial idea for the other space was based off of kind of this image that popped into my head of a boy and his horse kind of transitioning into an image of a boy and his IV pole.
Hmm.
Like kind of, instead of holding the stirrups, he's holding his IV line. Um, and when that image popped into my head, I got really excited because I realized like, oh, you could almost tell like a story where a kid is using their imagination to process all of the things that they're experiencing. Um, and yeah, initially the film was using all different types of like kind of movie metaphors for what uh, he was experiencing going through treatment. And then I realized the sci-fi metaphors were coming a lot easier to me, and that sci-fi just has more opportunities to uh, explain what is happening to you when you're going through cancer. And so as the film evolved, it became like this kind of real life medical drama situation and fantasy sci-fi epic um, that is almost kind of it occurred to me like after I got deeper into the story that I feel like I definitely was inspired a good deal by Calvin and Hobbes and the way that he's always using his imagination to uh, understand what is happening to him.
Interesting.
So
Um, so I guess correct me if I'm wrong, but you're using so you were like when you were going through cancer treatment, you were making origami every day and then coming home to animate it, which is really it sounds exciting, but also
yeah,
terrible, if that makes sense. Um,
yeah.
and then like you're using this film as an opportunity to um like bring through the story of how you experienced, going through this.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously isn't exactly how I experienced things. I
Right,
was a
right.
little older when I was going through treatment. I was 16 and
Okay.
Otis is supposed to be around 9 or 10. Um, so I feel like uh I was a little more intellectual in the way that I was actually understanding treatment. But in terms of how I was kind of in part dealing with the emotional aspect of being in the hospital all the time, creativity was very therapeutic.
Yeah, that makes
Um,
sense.
so making origami just kind of is a meditative thing to create something and slow down and take my mind off things, or think sometimes, because if it's something I've folded a bunch of times, then it doesn't take as much thought uh, to it was just very therapeutic. And so for Otis and his story, I wanted to kind of show like the active side of how you could use your imagination to understand what's happening to you. Because I saw a lot of kids in the hospital that were so brave, but they just couldn't quite understand
Yeah.
what what was happening. Um, I had this one kid that was a roommate, hospital hospital roommate of mine pretty frequently, that took everything like a champ, but he was scared to death of the blood pressure cuff. The way that it squeezes your arm, I think, was just uncomfortable for him. I think he was like 3 or 4, and so the way that he reacted to that, in some ways, is the sort of thing that I hope the film could help kids with, is to see uh, here's situations you often find yourself in, and here's how you can face it with courage.
Wow.
Um, because he at one point with that patient, uh, we did have like the nurses like draw back the dividing curtain between our hospital beds and have them take my blood pressure so that he could see, here's what's supposed to happen. Like, you don't need to freak out. And he saw that, and um, I think it kind of inspired him a little bit to try a little harder, not to freak out when the blood pressure cuff was squeezing his arm. He still ended up freaking out, but he actually did try to like not not let it get to him for a minute because he saw someone handle it better. And so yeah, that's kind of emotionally what inspired the film for me is just showing kids a really positive example of how you can go through treatment well, especially when so often the portrayal of cancer patients, particularly pediatric cancer patients, is just kind of the stuff that you see for fundraising, which is great, but often depicts uh, us as really sad and miserable and um, down in the dumps. Where yeah, you have times where you are barely have any energy and you're not feeling good. Um, but that's not representative of what uh, kids going through cancer are always acting like, and it's certainly not, I think, what we would want to aspire to when we're in that situation, to just be um, sad all the time. So
So do you, when this film is finished, do you hope that it is given as a tool in places where kids are experiencing cancer treatment?
yeah, I mean, I I I do think I want to maybe try to get into a few film festivals just to see if something greater could come of the film. But by and large, my primary goal is purely just to get it into hospitals so that patients there can have it as a resource, something that they can identify with and be entertained by, and also something that could be um, kind of a little educational, not in a dry sense at all, but
Right, right, of
um,
course. No, it sounds like it to me. I
yeah,
mean, like, I've seen some clips of it, and there's the side where it's like based in what's really happening in reality, and then there's the sci-fi side of like, overcoming challenges and making it exciting and fun to watch. I think it's very honorable that you've decided to like take this love of stop motion and the skills you've gained by going to school and practicing for years and years and to create something like this to as a potentially a tool for kids who are going through something very hard, which you went through as well. I think that's I think it's I don't know, it makes me happy.
I'm
um
glad. Yeah,
yeah, and I think it's a great goal as well, like how does it feel, as you're creating this film and having have gone through some of these experiences yourself? How does your, how are you feeling when you're maybe producing in a more emotional scene, or you're working with people who may not really understand um what it because you have a team, what it meant to go
yeah,
through an experience like this? Like, how does that feel for you?
yeah. I mean, there are definitely there are some scenes when I was animating that I was getting emotional at points working on it because I was channeling everything that I felt and putting it into that, and it was um, hitting home for me more than anything else that I've animated. I think has impacted me emotionally while I'm working, but not necessarily in any way that kind of got me down, but it was just kind of reliving some things in my head and not it's just kind of crazy to be like, wow, yeah, I lived through that, you know, and yeah, I mean, when I animated, what's done on the film so far, that was geez, 4 or 5 years ago now, and so it was even that much closer to I wasn't as far out from treatment then as I am now. It's been you know another 5 years since
Yeah, right.
since treatment. So uh, it's yeah, it's kind of crazy to think about. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that makes total sense. And for me, like stop motion has always been such an internal passion, like that I can't not put my emotions
Yeah.
into it. And I think that's also part of what I think most people in stop motion really feel connected to in a way. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, you've been working on this film for quite a few years now. You had the idea in your initial year at CalArts, and then you started it as your thesis film. Is that correct?
Yeah. So well, I had the idea like the it was literally the day I submitted my application to CalArts. Um, and it kind of bummed me out because one of the things they encourage you to put in your portfolio is ideas for projects you want to
Oh
make.
no.
And I mean, I think I was kind of out of time to like develop enough to add that, but
Yeah, yeah.
um yeah, so and that was like, very raw, like I just got the idea. Um, but I got to CalArts and I had already started working on some concepts and I actually made some puppets already. Um, Nothing that ended up in the film as it exists now, because this was back when it was part Western. Um, but I showed it to my mentor. I was like, I think I want to do this for my first year film. And she said, no, no, this idea is too good. You have to like save this, refine your skills, do this for your thesis film, or at least like wait a year or two.
Yeah, right.
um, so uh, I, uh, I was kind of bummed in some ways because it was like I want to start working on this now, but that is good advice. And now I need to come up with another idea for my first year film.
So,
Um,
so are you happy you waited those couple of years before you started?
yeah,
She right?
yeah, yeah, for sure. And it also gave me the time, like I made other films my second and third years at CalArts too, and but that whole time, like in like my writing classes at CalArts, um, I was always bringing in new versions of the other space and refining it, so that I could really make it stronger than just if even I put 1 year into it. I really wanted to take my time in the story development process.
Yeah, it makes sense, and
Um,
especially because it's like a project that's near and dear to you. I'm wondering, can you give an overview of where the project is now? Like, production wise, I know you have a team built, and you've got this Kickstarter, and you've got a whole bunch of scenes done, and the puppets. Like, can you give me like an overview of like where it's at right now?
yeah, so my initial concept for the film was for it to be this 7 minute epic sci-fi adventure, and I was chugging away at it at CalArts, and a couple of my mentors, David from Open the Portal, especially, they kind of pulled me aside and said, "Hey, I don't think you're going to make it schedule wise if you want to finish your film at school." And
7 minutes.
they, yeah, so I had 7 minutes and it's all precious to me, so I didn't know what to cut. They suggested cutting 3.5 minutes out of the middle of the film, and I think it's a great idea. I have no regrets doing that in the moment. It made sense. I did finish the film in school because the plot is still intact, but I felt like I cut the emotional core out. And
Hmm.
so then after I graduated and started working in the industry, um, I was still just sitting on my film, not quite sure what to do with it. And it occurred to me, I don't think I'm ever going to be happy fully releasing this thing until those 3.5 minutes are added back into the film. Um, and so I I realized that, okay, if I'm going to do this properly, I should probably raise some money to so that I can focus on it and give it the time and attention it needs. Because when I was in Cal Arts, my goal for the film was for it to be kind of like, yeah, I don't know if I quite achieved it, but almost at like kind of Bix Pix, like low budget feature film level, like quality animation. And um so I realized, like, if I'm actually going to give this the time that it needs, I need to raise money. And uh, a friend recommended doing crowdfunding, so started looking into that, and just kind of pulling the team back together, that people from Cal Arts that had helped me on the project, a bunch of my closest friends at Cal Arts were in the music school. I think I had more friends that were composers and musicians than animators, and so which was great each year when I wanted to have a score made for my film. That I'd be like, hey, do you want to take a whack at this? And one of my good friends ended up doing the score for The Other Space, and so um, uh, obviously want to bring him back in the project. That's Keon. And then my good friend Kevin has been working in sound ever since he graduated from Cal Arts, so he's going to be doing the sound design. And then my best friend Alex is the one that I grew up animating with since middle school. He's an amazing concept artist now, and so he's going to be doing backgrounds and stuff. So and my wife is helping produce, and she's going to fabricate with me on the film. So yeah, just kind of pulled together close friends that I know could do the work, and
Yeah.
we're
Wow.
excited to do it.
I'm really impressed that you didn't let your film idea go, because like it's so hard to open up a project that is like quote unquote finished in what it
Yeah,
was supposed to be and say like, nope, this isn't done and I'm gonna reopen it up. Like every once in a while I think of doing a Kickstarter or crowdfunding and I'm terrified. I don't think anybody's gonna
yeah,
donate to me. I don't know if I have it in me to really go hard and like how did
yeah,
it feel to be like, all right, I'm actually gonna do this, especially when you've already been working in the industry, and to say like, I need to take a break, I need to produce this film,
yeah,
I'm 100% in, I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna start a Kickstarter, what, et cetera, et cetera. I'm gonna call up all my old friends and be like, hey, remember that thing I did 5 years ago or whatever? Like, we're doing
yeah.
it again. Like, how did you go all in?
So I feel like I kind of saw how the industry was slowing down
Hmm.
some, that there were larger gaps between my contracts, and I was always kind of noodling on the film, like when I had time anyway. And I realized that if the industry keeps slowing down like this, I'm probably going to have a gap between contracts that could totally work to produce this. And it definitely is terrifying, like putting like actually putting myself out there that way with a crowdfunding campaign. I am nervous if we're going to reach our goal or not. I'm optimistic,
Yeah.
but it's nerve wracking. Um,
What
so
what happens if you don't reach your goal?
with Kickstarter, if you don't reach your goal, then everyone who's pledged money, uh, that like Kickstarter doesn't charge their cards or anything. The project just kind of, you know, it didn't happen like from Kickstarter's perspective, like you didn't reach your goal, we're not going to charge anybody. And I I did look around at other crowdfunding sites, and I know Indiegogo and others allow you to raise money and not have to reach your goal. But I feel like the budget that we've put together, this is like the minimum budget that we need to move forward. And I feel like it's realistic enough that if we're not able to hit that goal, I don't think I'd want the money anyway, because it would just be frustrating to then have to find time to chip away at the rest of the project while working full time on something else. So it's kind of, as far as the Kickstarter itself is concerned, it's kind of an all or nothing situation where if we don't reach our goal, I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board and try to figure out how are we going to make this happen, because I still want to do it no matter what.
Right.
But yeah, it's nerve-wracking right now.
That does sound very nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, what you said, my first thought was like, why not go with Indiegogo where you'll still get money and then you can produce it? But then what you said makes total sense to me, because like, why would I produce this and then kill myself while trying to work if I didn't get the funds to make it worth everybody's time? And then also you have to like give rewards and stuff possibly, and you don't like, you weren't fully, that makes a lot of sense. So I really hope you, you get it. That would be incredible. But also, you know, I think that's a good call to like, for yourself, even just like physically, emotionally, mentally, just to like be like, all right, back to the drawing board. How can I make this happen? I mean, I really I do think this is a great story. And if you're listening, I encourage you to go to the Kickstarter. I'm going to put a link in the description of this. So interesting. So what left has to be done on the film? Because you've already filmed 4 minutes and you have 3.5, it's the 3.5 minutes that have to be filmed still. Got you. You still have all the same old puppets and everything? You've saved them, or you have to build new ones, or like is it a little bit of mix of both? And like,
so the puppets are all still intact, in good shape. I'll have to make new I'll have to make new hands for them, just because they're latex and they you know, they've degraded, and I already put some damage in just from animating them before. But there aren't many new sets required. I still have the hospital set.
nice.
And it actually is also giving me an opportunity to go back and fix a couple of issues with the original film. Some of the stuff shot in space. I was doing rear projected backgrounds. And I didn't realize that the bit depth and resolution for what I was projecting really mattered. And that when I went to color correct, if that wasn't there, it was going to fall apart.
Oh no.
So and it's also giving me an opportunity to redesign Otis's spaceship a little bit. I had never like settled on a design for like rockets in the back of it. So in the original version of the film, there's just holes in the back of the model. And I figured I would add something in post, and that never happened.
Oh.
So you know, there's lots of little things like that that I'll be updating, but mostly it's really just animating that 3.5 minutes that's missing. And there's not a ton of fabrication. It's mostly animation, and so we're trying to just make sure that I'm not going to do rear projection. I'm going to get a big TV and do kind of like what they did in The Mandalorian, I guess, where just because there's so much stuff in this film that's so shiny that I can't even do front light backlight and have it pull a clean mat without it still needing a ton of roto. So
Hmm.
um, I gotta have practical moving backgrounds. So
Makes sense. Makes sense. I mean, I like hearing the
yeah,
process behind it. And you had posted a bunch of stuff a long time ago, hadn't you? But I don't, did
yeah,
you take it down or something? Because I remember like when I remember seeing a bunch of stuff like years ago already and being like super
yeah.
impressed, and like your puppets, like the character design like stood out immediately as like kind of different than what was everybody else was doing. So like, I think, I mean, everything I've seen looks amazing. The sets, the
Hey,
lighting,
thank you.
the like big spaces you've created, and it's like a fun, it's like fun sci-fi.
Yeah,
Also having like a heartfelt message. So yeah, I'm really excited to fingers crossed see it come, the rest come together and it to be fully produced, and you can finally do something with this that you always wanted to do and move on to the next thing. I'm wondering,
yeah.
say you get the funding and you finish it and it does well and ends up in hospitals and it becomes like this really cool tool. How will you, like, what would that mean for you overall, and like what will you move on to next after that?
I mean, I don't have any in terms of like personal projects, I don't have any other um stories that are even nearly like half as developed as this.
Yeah.
Um, but I uh I think it would just it would mean a lot to me to just have this available as a resource for kids. I think that would be the main thing, and you know, I'd be happy to just jump back into the industry,
Yeah.
you know, once we're done with this, and if I ever have any other ideas in the future, maybe I could try to do a Kickstarter again, but I don't know. We'll have to see how this one goes. And
Well,
I
you've
feel
gained a
like
lot of experience for this one anyways, regardless.
yeah, and I think any other project uh I, I don't know if I have any other stories to tell that are are this
Hmm.
personal and emotional. At least not yet. But that's, you never know what you're going to get dealt in life. I never thought I was going to get diagnosed with cancer. So,
Right, of course. I mean, some
yeah,
people have an issue where they're like, I have 5,000 stories, I don't know which one to tell. And I think it's great
yeah,
and special that you have such a strong, compelling story to tell, and you're trying to make that happen, and you haven't given up, and it's been years, and you're willing to do, get out of your comfort zone, do things that are scary, like start a Kickstarter, call up all your old friends, etc. So I think that's fantastic, and I hope the best for what's to come. Is there anything, as we're maybe like wrapping up here, is there anything that's we didn't talk about that you wanted to share?
um, I'm not sure. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah,
I mean, it's been super interesting getting to learn more about your story. I think it's really cool that your parents were super supportive. Your dad was super supportive of getting into animation. Really unfortunate what
yeah,
you were dealt with in life, but I think it's incredible that you're using, your passion to kind of turn that into a story to help others get through something that you went through. I think that's quite amazing. And, I think those stories need to be told. And I really hope that this happens for you. So I'll be
yeah.
watching.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah. No, I'm excited. I hope the Kickstarter continues to go well. We're like 40% funded right now, which is yeah, almost halfway there, and still more days left in the campaign than have passed. So
Great. Yeah. Well, if you're
yeah,
if you're if you're not 50% through your campaign and you're almost at 50% funding, I hope that's a good sign.
yeah,
I know of campaigns that have not hit their funding, and then like the last day there's this big thing, and then
yeah,
suddenly they overreach their goals. So
yeah. No, and I know there are some people that are waiting that like I think want to give it the last minute. So
just to keep you on your edge.
yeah, I don't know, but I understand that everyone has their reasons for
Yeah.
giving when they decide to, and it's yeah, it's just you know
Well,
Yeah.
thanks. Yeah, I mean, best of luck with the project. Thanks so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure. And is there any final words that you want to say as we're saying goodbye?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on. It's an
Of
honor to be
course.
on the podcast, and yeah, it's fun to chat with you.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
cool.
so
Thanks for coming on, Blake. It's been a pleasure. And if you're listening and you want to check out the Kickstarter, I'm definitely going to put a link to that, and as well as Blake's website, which is pointblake.com, and his Instagram, which is pointblakevideos. And all those links will be in the description of this chat. And that's all for now. So thank you so much for listening. Okay, bye. The music for this podcast was composed by Willem Mendo and the graphics by Luhan Wang. I encourage you to look them up if you've enjoyed their work.